All right, welcome back to the Central Connection. I am sitting here with Danielle Stowell, Wicked River Event Productions. Danielle and I became friends a few years back, and I get to watch her continue to put on amazing events in Dubuque, from farmers markets to private events to weddings. A lot of great stuff, and even events that sometimes get canceled, like the recent snow.
Is that where
sculpting.
we're gonna start?
We're gonna start there. No, we don't have to go into
That's
some
fine.
sticky stuff like that. But that was a bummer because that's one of my favorite events, and you do a fantastic job.
Yeah.
And let's start off in the icky sticky. What
Okay,
happened there?
sure.
That's a bummer. How do you get through something like that?
Yeah. So for just background, Winter Arts Festival is a community event put on by the Dubuque Museum of Art in the city of Dubuque. It's a week-long or a 4-day-long snow sculpting competition. It's really cool. We build 8-foot-tall blocks of snow in giant rectangles, and then artists come from all over the state to sculpt. And what they come up with is always really, really cool. And then there's a community day with a bunch of hands-on activities in partnership with the symphony orchestra, food and hot drinks, and just a ton of really cool stuff. And over the last few years, we've had a few thousand people on that community day. And I don't know when you'll air this, but for the last month, the temperatures have been in the 40s.
It's
so
crazy. Yeah.
there's no snow. Sundown and Chestnut Mountain couldn't even make snow for us. So there was nowhere we could just make cold weather out of thin air. And I struggle with not being able to control everything when it comes to my events. So that was a tough thing to get through. But yes, we had to cancel it. I mean, but if there's one thing you can't control, it's the weather. So
look at me just launching.
we just
right
rolled with
into
it.
You're not going to be open to talking about anything. So part of why I wanted to bring you.
It's fine.
It was
It'll
hard
be fine.
for us too. The community was like, "Oh man," but you couldn't control
Yeah.
Mother Nature.
Yeah.
And actually, last year I was on a team and got to participate, but it was also
It was
melting
just at that
in our hands.
Yeah, it was
pretty
just
rough.
at that kind of threshold where it could be okay, but maybe wasn't. And the cool thing is, though, I will say Winter Fun, the organization that sanctions.
Yeah.
See, I knew I was
No,
going to
you're
do
fine.
that. That sanctions the national snow sculpting competition. So we're the state of Iowa competition. Every state can have competitors, and then they go on to Lake Geneva the next year
Yeah.
to compete at the national level. They have said that we can still pick a winner based on the designs and the artist statement. So state of Iowa will be represented next year at nationals.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, we just unfortunately won't have the carving competition. So we have 2 local judges who are right now still deliberating who will get to go on.
Wow.
So that's cool, but it's still a disappointment. But what can you do?
So
What can you do?
getting back, because I know, speaking of things that don't always work out, we'll talk about this. We recorded an awesome Connected, talked about it, did a video.
Yeah, this
See
is take 2.
David's over there nodding his head, and he needs to let it go too. Like we did take 2 because we recorded an awesome episode, got to connect and get to know you better. And then we got into where David was putting it together, and he's like, "What happened to the sound?"
We have some tech
We
issues.
had some tech issues.
Those happen too.
So things happen that are, whether we think they are or not in our control, they just happen. And that's I think that's a big part of life is how do you move through it?
Yeah.
And you have this, you're in the event space. So this is where you said it, you love to control things and keep them moving the right way, but
Yeah.
you have to be prepared for that. That's part of your deal.
Yeah, for sure. And I definitely am someone who learns by making mistakes, or I learn by doing, I guess I should
Yeah.
say. So if everything goes right, great. I did it right the first time, but sometimes that's how you learn is you do it. And if it doesn't go right, you make adjustments and you do it better the next time. So I've definitely had that and, learned from it, and backup plans on backup plans on backup plans, especially when you're outdoors at events, things like that. But if I've done my job right, everything is just kind of stacked like dominoes, and
Yeah.
I tip one over and the rest of them just go. So that's the ideal, but it doesn't always happen.
I
That's
heard
okay.
a quote this morning on my drive in. I was listening to a podcast, and I think I'm going to butcher it, but that's part of the whole process here. It's show me somebody who's suffered, and and you're showing me someone who I want to lean in with and learn from. And I think that's a big part of life. Is if you haven't been through that ringer, We all are. Everyone, no matter where you're at, you could look at somebody who has great wealth, let's say, or comes from a family of money and think that they have it made and laid out for them. And I can tell you that, like, I've experienced that sentiment towards, coming up pretty poor and not, or at least perceiving that, and seeing, oh, they must have it easy. It's like, no, they don't. Like, no one has it easy. I don't care if your metrics is wealth or, status or whatever it is. We all have our stuff. We kind of get to choose what our stuff is too, in some degree, but we all have been through something. And that's part of what makes us good humans, is just like knowing that and then moving on. So got to get into this. So we started talking about, you in Dubuque. So big part of this is like, here's an amazing person that's doing awesome stuff for our community, in our community. Give us your backstory again, because you started here. You're originally from
Gilbert, Iowa, which is
right.
a teeny tiny town, less than 2,000 people, just outside of Ames. So for anyone who knows where Iowa State University is, that's usually my benchmark. I just tell people I'm from Ames. But I found Dubuque when I came to Loras College. So I went to Loras, and then I kind of lucked into a job right after college in Chicago, and I knew some other Loras friends who were moving there too, so it just was kind of perfect timing, and I moved to Chicago for several years, and then the 2008 and 9 crash happened, and so my job got upended, and there was some tough stuff there, and I ended up working somewhere that I didn't love that job, and I think if I had loved my job, I might have loved the city more, but because everything else was great on paper. Like, my friends all lived there. We were all like in our first big kid jobs for the first time, making great money. But I just never felt home there. And so when I thought about like where might my next step be, Dubuque is to me, this perfect in between from my tiny hometown, from a giant city, Chicago. It's this perfect size. It's accessible. It always felt like home, even when I moved back and didn't know anybody here anymore, because all my friends have moved away, and I wasn't really as connected to the college as I had been.
But it still felt, when you came here, it felt homey.
Yeah, it was more of a lifestyle and a pace, I think, of life that I was looking for and not finding where I was. So, Chicago was fun when I moved there when I was 22.
Yeah.
And but you just kind of get in this grind of work and going out and
repeat.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like I blinked and 2 years had gone by and I had nothing else to show for it. I was like, what have I been doing for 2 years? Oh, the same thing over and over, which were fun things. And I don't regret that time at all. I kind of missed parts of myself that I thought I had before I lived there. And then I found them again when I moved back here. It was just a little bit of a slowdown, a little bit of being more present and focused, and that's what I was looking for, and I was able to find that here. So
that's interesting that you present it that way, because that's like when I lived in Chicago area. I at one point I lived in Forest Park, and I think that the name, the slogan for the town was like the big city, small field, or something like that. All these towns have these things, and Dubuque, masterpiece on the Mississippi River, which a friend of mine had just pointed out. He's like, my parents go to museums to see masterpieces. He's like, we need to rebrand this town. And he probably was right. And he's a city official, actually, but, or works in the city government. And I won't name him. I won't oust him. But he's got a good point, because like you're bringing up the fact that you've come back to Dubuque because it gives you a feel, and you feel like you fit in and you have a role to play, and you play with these other people. And just even like walking into Devour the other day, I saw Jillian Pinchuk and her daughter having a meal, and they just invited me over. Like, it's hang out, and Lauren's going off to school again, or getting her master's degree, and we just start chatting. And Jillian's very active, does a lot of interesting stuff, and she's doing things in the arts. And we just right away synced up, and we hadn't seen each other in probably 6 months or something like that, but. Like ships in the night, we all are very busy. We're passing. You and I probably pass each other on the road multiple times in a week, but we're just boom, boom, boom. We're not seeing each other. We're just firing off and doing our thing. But Dubuque has a small enough community that like you can run into somebody in a coffee shop. That's why I bring that up. And for you, you've got the event. So you're producing events. So you did a lot of that work in Chicago, but you were able to kind of get your center here. What did you mention? Clark is where you.
Yeah, that's where I came back to. So, while I was in Chicago, that was my first kind of introduction to event planning. I worked for a corporate events agency, so they did everything from branding to planning to on-site to financial, like budgeting assistance. So there was a team of about 60 people.
Oh, wow.
And then it was great. I got to travel all over the country. We were working on mostly like trade shows or like sales meetings or like educational, team building things or sales incentive trips. So working with companies of all kinds of sizes all over the country. I loved that job. And then 2008 and 9 happened and the crash happened. And so, hundreds of thousands of people lost their jobs. And I was one of them. Our company got bought by a giant global trade show conglomerate. And I think there was like 8 people who got hired on at that
So they
new
just
company.
restructured and
Yep.
just chopped it.
Yeah. So I ended up at Microsoft, who had a big like customer conference center downtown in Chicago. And it was fine, but it was very corporate, very kind of cutthroat. And I was just booking people's meeting rooms, like I wasn't really involved in the rest of the tech or anything like that.
And
It was just
that's
an
not you.
environment that
Yeah.
I guess at least I learned that about myself is I'm not built for like a ladder climbing organization. I don't care. I just don't care. And I kind of can't relate to the actions sometimes people take who do care about that. So it just was not a very healthy environment. And I think I think often about how if that first company was still around and I still had that job, I'd probably still be in Chicago because I loved that job and I loved what I did. But that's not how it happened. So when I moved back to Dubuque, I wanted to do more of that again, but that job didn't really exist here. There were no planning agencies or anything like that. So I ended up at Clark doing their event technology. So I learned, how to run a soundboard and how to fix a projector. And I learned a lot of the tech, and it was really just day of execution. And I missed that whole planning process ahead of time because a lot of times people would come to me and say, here's our event, here's what we need. And just because I had worked in that sphere before, I would have a lot of questions about like, oh, what about this, and this?
You can see where they
haven't thought of that.
things. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and those are things I just picked up along the way just from doing it and
Yeah.
doing that work. So I went to Startup Dubuque, talked to Jay Wickham and said, hey, I have this idea for this company. Is anybody doing that here? And he helped me research, and turns out nobody was really doing it. I mean, you could get a job at like Grand River Center or maybe a hotel. And then you're doing event planning, but on a venue side, it still is not that kind of complete start to finish. And I really wanted that. So I had to do it for myself.
And so you basically, through Jay, who's great, he's helped so many people just get their structure set up and get things rolling. You were able to create, okay, well, here's my business model, here's what I'm doing. But you then had almost 0 clients at that moment. So talk us through that. Like, what was your first break into the market? And now you're doing, you're you were it, like Wicked River, you guys are known as putting on farmers markets, all kinds of events. I'll probably butcher it if I name the wrong one. So
That's
I'm going to
okay.
be careful. You can tell me, but like walk me through what the progress of your development has been.
Yeah, I don't necessarily recommend this for others, but I just started by volunteering. So, you don't want to give your talents away for free. But here, that's just how I found a way in. So, and again, I mentioned not knowing anybody when I moved here. There would be cool arts events I wanted to go to. Like Voices had kind of just started and I wanted to go experience that, but it's weird to go stand by yourself in a corner when you don't know anybody. So I would volunteer. I sign up. I'll work your reg table. Yeah, I'll bartend for you. Yeah, I can help set up and tear down. Like I just found ways to volunteer doing the things at events that I would want to attend anyway. So that's kind of how I started knowing people and meeting people. And I just kind of started to insert myself a little more until finally somebody was like, I bet people would pay you for what you're doing for free right now. You should look into that. So Steeple Square and Fountain of Youth, you mentioned Caprice Jones.
Yeah.
They were my first clients. So Caprice put on graduations for his Future Talk and Real Talk students. So I helped with their graduations. Steeple Square had just started booking events too. So they were still pretty new and I lived in the neighborhood. So I thought, what a great place to go volunteer. So that was another opportunity that presented itself eventually to let me get paid. So I just kind of started saving. So I had my full-time job. I was volunteering a lot for events. I started offering to plan more events, and that's where a little bit of side hustle money started coming in. And I just kind of saved that until I got to a number that I felt, okay, I could maybe live off this for a while. If I never got another gig, I'll be fine for a while. And so for 2 years, I just kind of did that, working on the side with my full-time job. And Clark was great. I liked it there. It just wasn't exactly the fit that I wanted. So, yeah, after about 2 years, I had a little savings and I thought, I'm going to quit my job. And I did.
Nice.
And it has worked out, luckily, knock on wood.
Now you have a staff and you have a pretty good book of events that you're seasonally, you just have it mapped out. It's a great.
Yeah, exactly. And I just thought I'd work for myself till I died and that would be fine. But then along came Teresa, who is my event coordinator now, and she's so great. She has grown the business. We've easily doubled the business since she came on board. Nice. And she just happened to find me. I wasn't looking to hire anyone, but she was like, hey, I want to learn. Again, you don't have to pay me. This is how too many people start, and I don't recommend it, but it's worked out.
I'll argue against that because I think that that's a big piece of your success. Like you're obviously, bright-eyed, bushy-tail. You show up and you're of service, but that a lot of people like this is getting my juices flowing as far as entrepreneurial talk. But a lot of people say I'm going to do this, and then they put these hard and fast lines down, and they basically boxed themselves out of opportunities versus when you're getting started. And I'm still I'm seasoned in a lot of my businesses, but I still show up and just be of service. Like I might want a project or want something, but like, here's what we can do. And you get to a level where you don't give it all away, but I'm not hungry as I was then, when I began, but when I was hungry, I was out just giving it away and helping.
Right. So, yeah. And I think that's important in that, I mean, you could speak to reputation all day long that way too.
Great relationships through all the places you gave away, and you were flying at 10,000 feet while on the ground,
and you're learning.
To see they're missing here, they're missing there. Like maybe I can come back and present that like there's another way. There's an easier way to do this.
Yeah, and you're learning too. So I feel like to learn on a client's dime is a tough thing to sell. So that's another reason that I was like, well, let me just help where I can, even if it's not a complete package. I still feel good about what I'm doing and I'm learning so that then when the next person comes along, I can charge them appropriately for my time. So that's kind of how we progressed. And same with Teresa. She worked one event with me. She came down to the Millwork Night Market, which to me is a pretty physically demanding event. We're outside. It's usually pretty hot. It's a long day. There's a lot of lifting, a lot of transporting heavy stuff. I don't think people realize sometimes on the back end how much physical setup and teardown is required for events. And after that night, she's like, wait, I thought you said this was one of the hard ones. And I was like, oh boy, how much can I pay you to stay with me? Because I didn't want her to have to go get a job to pay the bills. Right. I wanted her to work with me because that's a great attitude. And I need to find more of that in the world. And so yeah, that's kind of how we started working together. And last year, I had some opportunities to write grants for other projects we were doing around the city. And I was able to offer her a salary, which I feel really good about. I don't even always pay myself consistently, but for her to have some security to be able to stay and work with me and also grow her own talents, that was really important to me. And now we're in the point where we need to hire again. Like cool. I've been in business since 2015. So whatever math that is, 8 years. So it's a slow journey and it's progress and it's a grind sometimes, but I mean, it's a fortunate place to be in. We have more business right now than we can handle and requests keep coming in. So
that's great.
Especially weddings. I think weddings were somewhere I never saw myself, but there's a demand there. So I'll figure out how to fill it, I guess. And yeah.
As long as it fills you. I mean, you're going to get to that point. Yeah. I know that you're probably even there. Like, it's like, if it makes sense for you to do. I hear about these photographers that we're off doing photography. They're like, oh, there's so much money in weddings. And then they have the terror of working for the Bridezilla. Like, yeah, I'm done with weddings.
I'm so lucky. I've never had a
they make great.
bridezilla, man. We have the best couples. I am so lucky. I've had tough parents of couples. That to me tends to be where some
Friction.
issues arise. Yeah. Family dynamics are tricky, man. But whatever. That's we're there. We're often like a bouncer or a buffer to help with people. Yeah,
You're in.
kicking people out. No, we've never had to do that.
Out of this.
Never had to do that, fortunately. But yeah. So the journey hasn't taken me exactly where I thought. I never thought I'd be a business owner. That wasn't in the back of my mind ever. But I like what I do a lot, and so if I can make money on it and work for myself, great. Because now it'd be hard to go back and I think work for anybody else.
I think that's the trap of entrepreneurship a lot of times.
Yeah.
Working back to Dubuque, so you love Dubuque. It's clear, like this is home for you. What are some of the aspects of this town outside of your event planning, just in Dubuque? What are like name 5 things, or give me a number of things that just immediately hit you? Like if I say your home is in Dubuque, what does that mean to you?
I love the river. I love the bluffs. I love the just topography of this area, and the history of this area I think is pretty rich. It's just beautiful here. And I'm from my town is surrounded by cornfields and I can see 10 miles away. Like it's not scenic, and maybe to some people it is, but
it's the global perception of what Iowa is.
100%.
And as Dubuquers, people are like, oh, Iowa, idiots out walking around, or they'll see they picture a cornfield.
Yeah, exactly.
Or they picture Nebraska, which I just drove through recently, and it's like, there's not much going on in Nebraska,
Right.
So
yeah,
we have this defensiveness as Dubuquers because we're like, no, man, the driftless region, this is incredible.
So beautiful.
But, yeah,
I know, it's so beautiful. And so that's number one, I think. I can remember when we were coming to visit Loris, like driving up Loris Boulevard before you hit Kane Hall, like if you take Grandview and you turn, you can see the Green Bridge to Wisconsin, you can see the river, and it was fall, so it was just beautiful.
Yep.
And I think I made the decision in the car right there, like, oh, I'm going to school here.
That's cool.
And I hadn't even been on campus yet. So I think that's first and foremost for me. I've also found it really accessible, and I know that's coming from like a polite white girl's perspective. Not everybody has it as easy as that. Nobody looks at me sideways or assumes anything about me, really. I'm just pretty polite, so I follow the rules. And if the rules don't make sense, I change the rules. So, but that's a thing. It's accessible. If there's an issue, you can go to a city council meeting and talk to the city council. You can go make a meeting with the mayor if you need to. Yeah. I mean, you can find who you need to talk to make a change, or at least that's been my experience. So if something is wrong or something isn't working, or you see a community of people that are trying to get something done and they can't, usually you can figure out how to get it done. So I have really appreciated that about Dubuque too. And I don't think coming in brand new when I first moved here that I saw that, but it just takes asking all the questions and, again, inserting yourself. I have friends who have lived here and have moved away because they say there's nothing going on or they can't find their people. And I disagree, because I think you got to put yourself out there. Yeah. Nothing's going to come knock on your door, but if you want to make an effort, you can find it. And I have found plenty in Dubuque.
And you can become known for your unique traits that make you, a valuable player of the team. So I think that's a cool thing to sit on for a second, is accessibility. Like, you could call the mayor right now if you needed to. You might not get an answer, but he'll get back to you.
Sure. Yeah.
And we live in this community that's right-sized. It's right-sized in that regard, but it's also like it has some moldability that you can shape it.
Yeah, I think so.
And you have shaped it. Like, you talk about this. Well, you talk about night market, and you and a group of people got together and said, like, this needs to happen. And you made that happen. And now it's one of the most incredible experiences in the summer and fall.
Yeah, thank you. We're really proud of that. I should shout out to Andy for that. Andy Donnan is night market. Millwork Night Market, for anyone who doesn't know, it's a once-a-month evening farmers market that happens in the Millwork District. So Andy worked at the Dubuque Food Co-op when it very first opened, and there was not a lot else going on down there. It was like one of the first things, maybe Brazen, Namaste. I don't know what else was down there, but not a lot at that time. The buildings were still being finished, and she just had this vision of like, how cool would it be to have a farmer's market among these warehouses? It'd be so unexpected, and you can have food, and we can have music, and we can have beer. And so she had that vision and knew the farmers, because she's a farmer herself. and worked for Saturday morning farmers market, but didn't know how to go and make it happen. So we had met a couple times. She'd actually bought a record player from me off Craigslist. And so we had, and just a familiar face from the food co-op, I think. And so she reached out and was like, hey, do you think this would fly? I don't know where to begin. And so we spent 9 months planning the first one, and then it just worked. We didn't know if anyone would show up. We didn't know if vendors.
It didn't work. I remember now from our past conversation. So you mentioned that, like, again, speaking of the accessibility of Dubuque, it fell in a category that didn't exist. And so you went to the city council, and now I'm seeing that connection.
Yeah.
So you were able to just get some linguistics changed to make that an event.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when we first started, the city said, this will be so boring to so many people, but I find it fascinating. So the city has a special event permit process. If you want to close the street, you want to do a festival, you want to do anything on public property, you have to file for a permit. So farmers market is in a different category. And so we recruited a bunch of vendors. Andy was real intentional about the types of products that should be there. And so all along in this process, we were operating under a special event permit because that's what the city told us we were, even though the mission of what we were doing and the types of products that we had all fell under the state's definition of a farmer's market. Farmers markets have way fewer hoops to jump through, especially for vendors and food licensing. So if a food vendor or a grower or a farmer is licensed for a farmer's market, the way we were being told to apply for this event was under something else. So all our vendors had to pay additional licenses and fees to be able to participate. So we're like, well, that's not fair, because some people were like, hey, it's cost prohibitive. You're new. We don't know if we'll make our money back. Like, we can't participate. It's too risky. So yeah, we started bothering the city manager's office and city council and saying, what's going on here? So the city's ordinance about farmers market was written in such a way that it was singular and it was the market. So Saturday morning farmers market was the farmers market, and there wasn't room to allow any other farmers markets. So we just kept asking, and eventually they changed the city code to say a farmers market. So now our vendors can have one license and participate in any farmers markets that they want to, because we got that changed. So, and now we get to apply as a farmers market too, which is important to us. It's part of the local food scene. It's not a street festival. And while it has that vibe and some people come down just for that, that's great. But local foods is the focus first. And so I'm proud of that the city was open and listened to us and agreed with us. And we're like, oh, yeah, cool. We see what you're doing.
It's interesting, too, because what makes me, it's an incredible.
Is city code interesting?
No, absolutely not. I couldn't exist on listening to some of those meetings. And I tune in on their Facebook Live and listen to the city council meetings. It's good because you learn about things that are happening.
Yeah.
But it can be boring as hell.
Yes.
But what's interesting is like seeing the growth of that, because I've been here for the entire growth of when that started. And I had a friend that was participating in that, and it was interesting watching that grow. But now seeing it, it's like if you were to take it away, people would be livid. Yeah. Because it is like a street festival. You got a lot of different vendors. You got food trucks lining up. There's great music. You guys really curate an awesome event. And it's a bummer when we can't make it or we miss it because
it's rained out.
Yeah. It's nested in there, and it's done a ton for that district.
Well, and not just the district, but just the economic value. Yes, there's spillover effect to the restaurants and the bars and the stuff that are down there now and some of the shops, but just the economic value of what those vendors are making. Like, we've also had vendors who have started as hobbyists who are like, I do this thing, I don't know if it's a business, and now they've moved on to storefronts. And I know that's happened on Saturday morning market too.
Yep.
So there's a value in exposing, maybe someone who's trying something new, or they're just getting started in their craft and they're perfecting it. Or they're growing a new product that, people haven't eaten around here before. All that is really cool. And it's a good kind of low risk place to start.
Yeah.
That's exactly my journey too. I took really low risk because I had a job. I was just trying to see if something else could work, and it did. So it's been cool to watch that journey for other food and artist vendors too from Night Market.
Yeah. You're germinating opportunity for people. That's so cool. Yeah, I feel like we could talk specifically on that one event for a long time. one thing, I guess, what was shoot? I'm losing my train of thought a little bit because there's a lot of different avenues you can go down with you, and I came in hot with your canceled event, but Dubuque has a lot going for it, and when people come in, like obviously with Night Market, they're traveling through or they're passing through, and they see this, wouldn't a great event, and it exposes them to a piece of that. What other events, or do you have any like other events that are similar, or events that you're cooking up that you haven't released yet, or ideas that may just be complete pie in the sky?
Oh yeah, I have a pie in the sky idea, but
Let's
I
hear
don't
it.
want to talk about it yet.
You can't
Well,
release it.
Well, yeah, I suppose we could.
Well,
Okay,
go ahead. Yeah, no, take.
Well, we talked about this off mic afterwards. Take one. So I have it. Again, it's not my idea. I think people just have figured out that I know how to get things done, so they come to me with ideas, which I love because I do not see myself as like a super creative person particularly, but I love the problem solving of trying to figure out how to make something happen that people think can't. So so I went with someone else out to Chestnut Mountain during the off season. They're like, wouldn't this be the coolest concert venue? And I'm like, oh yeah, yes, it would. So I want to make that happen. I don't think it's a 2024 project. I think there's just a lot that would go into that. But I want that to happen, and I want it to be cool. I don't want it to be like, you know, somebody who's come through a million times. I want it to be something cool and big that an artist that's never been here before. They have a big capacity there. And it's just a really beautiful spot, and it overlooks the river. And so that's in the back of my mind always, but I haven't figured enough out for that yet.
So if you're
never
listening,
been done before, and I want to do it.
Yeah, if you're listening or tuned into this and you have an idea of how you can contribute to that, because that full giving that as an example, like it appeals to what you already love about this area, the topography, the river, the views, just the energy that being along the river bluffs has. And we have amazing properties. I mean, even Eagle Point Park, you know, someone I ran into recently, I can't remember who it was, but they said that Eagle Point Park is what sold them on Dubuque.
Wow.
Just like coming through and be like, we want to be here. And kudos to the city of Dubuque for having, we invest as a community a ton of money in just keeping these parks going, and they do a great job with flowers. And so like our community understands that and gets it, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe they're performing to the masterpiece on the Mississippi River. But I think that could be, I got all jammed about that, and I started going down a tangent. I think David had to cut us off. I'm like, all right, guys, wrap it up, because we were getting our creative juices flowing. Yeah. And I love the river too. Like, wouldn't it be cool to do a rad festival there? And they have all the things. They have the makings for that.
Right.
I also have other friends that I was just traveling with a friend, and he's got a farm on the way to Galena. And he's got ideas for, you know, creating an event space to do weddings and host different, you know, gatherings, and having lodging on this property. And it's incredible, beautiful property. They also do a lot of their own growing of foods. And so like, there are people who are in this collective of like wanting to see that happen. They love music, so live performance, you know. I think that's what's cool about here is like ideas can take shape, and you can actually achieve something that you want, and bringing that back to Dubuque. You know, we have all the things to do that. What do you see? One thing I always want to start bringing up to people, like, what do you see on the downtown area of the north end? So think of like the 18th, the Central Bend, you know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I live around the corner from here, so I'm here every day. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I think it has all of downtown, not necessarily just the central curve, but and maybe Main Street's perception is changing a little, but even when I first moved here, I had people being like, oh, don't go downtown at night by yourself.
Right.
I think there's a perception that is incorrect if you don't spend any time down here.
Yep.
So I think that's what I would say to people is like, come down. EuroHub just opened.
Love it.
That's one of my biggest things that I have found about Dubuque. Great food is not always easily found here. There are many great restaurants, but particularly ethnic food. Yep. There's a lot of high turnover. Places will be open for maybe a few months and then go away, or a few years and go away. So I don't know. I don't need another chain to come to town, you know. But there's so much good food that's popping up, and I would love to see that continue. And you know, Wes with Hot Diggity Dogs is in this neighborhood. EuroHub is in this neighborhood. There's a barbecue joint that's great in this neighborhood. I mean, there's just a lot lot going on down here, and I think people are missing out if they don't make an effort.
Okay, so
Come
you're an
down.
event planner. You produce really great events, and you've done farmers market. Now we're getting into some active thought curating here. But what would it do for this area to have like something that really highlights those assets? So just thinking in terms of things you just named, from Eurohub to Devour, from that little chunk of space, we've got 5 great, food vendors. And then you have the Taco Johns and the KFCs of the world, which, not to exclude them, but they would never show up with a pull-out tent and a folding table to do some things. But what could be done from your eyes, like to create exposure? You got Key City Creative Center, which is amazing. So like, how do you do something that doesn't seem too put on? Because I think some of those events can be really put on if Main Street, or no offense to them, but like it can seem really like forced.
Sure. Well, and just from asking food or restaurants to come be at food festivals or things at other places is really difficult for them. So like you have to double your staff, or you close your restaurant and you lose that on that venue because you want to go participate in XYZ event. I've been told no so many times, and I get it. I'm always going to keep asking because I want them there. But I think that's really hard for restaurants to manage. And kudos to the ones who can, but so I would say go support them where they are.
Well,
and
then
come down to where
that
they
brings
are.
me to like, so we walked into, David and I love Eurohub, and we went in there, and there was like the dude was packing up like giant trays of food, and I was like, "Where's that going?" It's like going down to Crescent Community Health.
Oh, wow.
And so like the staff at Crescent's like, we all want our lunch from there today. So they just pooled a bunch of money together. And they
Cool.
bought like a $200 thing of like chicken tikka masala or something like that, like, or butter chicken or something like that. But like that, I think, is a powerful way to approach it. Whereas this guy packed it up, he cooked it all day or 2 days, or whatever, and he's got this great stuff ready to go, and he can ship it out. And the guy from Crescent came and got it, and then they dealt with the ramekins and all the heat and all the different things to set it up. Versus, like you said, having these added staff members.
That's great.
Speaking of which,
I love that.
Versus, like, great. Now they're bricks
just
and mortar
open.
in our neighborhood. Lucas, friend of mine, fantastic. They have the food truck, so that season's going to come. So he has to do the double whammy. Now he's going to get pinched on, I have to staff my restaurant and I've got the food truck going out. But there's also benefits to that, because now he has a walk-in cooler and a physical location that he can prep all day for the food truck, because he sells out constantly.
Yeah. I hope they do farmers markets again. I hope they come to Codfish Hollow again, because people love that food. Love it. It's so good. So there are ways to get good local food or local restaurants at events for sure. And I love that people are just calling in huge orders and picking them up. That's great. That's awesome.
It's been a complaint so much so that I think Dubuque Initiatives or somebody put on a survey recently, and it was fed back to me that food, ethnic food, or having a higher quality of food, and also like being able to get something at 10 o'clock at night, which some of these new vendors are figuring out is kind of key. So is there like a food truck? There's a food truck rally that happens at the park downtown.
Food Truck Friday. So that was originally Travel Dubuque's idea. I helped them in year 1 figure out kind of how to structure it. And I believe Dubuque Main Street has since taken it over because it had to kind of take some time off during the pandemic, like we all did. So when it came back, I don't have as much information about it. But I think it's once a month on a Friday down in Washington Park. I've had people bring up, like, why isn't there a permanent food truck park where anybody can just come park, first come, first serve? I know that happens in other cities. My hometown, if Ames, Iowa can have a permanent food truck park, I'm sure Dubuque could. And wouldn't that be cool? Because if you want to patron those smaller businesses, you're going to find something great there any day of the week. And it's somewhere for people to go when there's not an event going on.
I'm open to sharing ideas that I'm not going to take advantage of. And I there's a place called Ender's Auto. It's like an old gas station
where you
could get your vehicle fixed. But I think that if somebody wanted to come into this community and build that out into like a serviceable kitchen, and I'm thinking like, you're going to have cornhole being played or bean bags or whatever out in there. You bring your dog, you bring your family. We're talking picnic tables, some umbrellas, but then like multiple food trucks
Yeah.
just kind of like
That's a good
on the
spot.
peripheral, and it's right in a core where it's super accessible. It would be so cool. I think that would be a game changer for this neighborhood in this area.
It's right by Comiskey Park,
It's just
too.
right. It's right in the mix, you know, and or even like but if you did an event at the park, but that's more you have to go to get to it. This is like everyone's already swimming right past it, so it becomes something. But again, my bells are ringing. Like, well, where are we gonna park? Figure it out. Walk. Like there's blocks and blocks of places to park.
Yep.
Walk 2 blocks, and people actually would, for that reason of like, well, we got to find somewhere to park for food because
Ride
people,
your bike.
yeah. Well, we're getting there with the bikeable town. Yeah. So we're hitting on a lot of different topics. You're excited about where Dubuque's going right now?
Yeah, I think so. I think that one of the things that I always think about and I don't have the answer for is how do you keep the college kids here? Like the young folks are who, are going to have the next cool idea or I guess they're the biggest population that leaves every year. So how do we get them to want to stay here? I'm the same. I left and came back. I had to leave in order to kind of realize what I had or what I was looking for, I guess. And I have found for the most part, not every time, but for the most part, Dubuque is a place where everybody wants to help. I talk to a lot of people about the, competition or cooperation over competition, and we all do better when we all do better versus, seeing someone as a threat. I think that's also important.
Do you think that's a thing that happens in this community? I feel like it happens everywhere, but I sometimes see that, and I guess I've transcended that to some degree, and I see it as, in fact, speaking of degree, Jordan Degree and I were just meeting this morning. We were chatting about that, and it was really cool how he framed competition, and it's like, no, it's not. It's healthy. Like he has that same mentality. Yes.
Yeah, it's totally an ecosystem, and if
he brought that up, he brought it to nature. He's like, like if there was only one type of food out there, like there's a variety of different things for people to feed off of, and that doesn't mean we should just have one thing, this monoculture. So it's look at nature and how nature works. It's about thriving through diversity.
Agreed. And I think that's also a good way to kind of learn the lesson that not everything can be for everyone. So it's okay if someone chooses to work with someone else and not you because maybe they provide that service better or they have a product that you don't have or whatever. And that's okay because what that would make me do is focus way more on what I'm good at, what I can provide, and hone those things. And I mean, it took me long enough to learn certain things that I had to put in my contract that I do not do or I do not touch because I had tried and failed enough that I had disappointed customers, and I don't want that. So now I would rather call Kyle and say, I have to hang a bunch of curtains from a tent ceiling and I don't know how, and I'm not a designer. Can you help me out? And look how that turned out. It was great.
I said yes. Yeah. Well, you needed help. I just said, I'm jumping at. I mean, you're somebody I'll drop things for.
Yeah. Well, and that's for the most part.
You've built those relationships.
Yeah.
That's what you've been able to do in this town. That's powerful. Is you've built relationships with people who will drop what they're doing and knock it out for you.
Well, and I think that goes back to what you said about being of service to others. I mean, to me, that's what it's about. And that's what motivates me, I guess. And so that's also why I've been able to be as successful, is because other people have pitched in when I've needed them to.
Yeah.
I mentioned before, I struggle with control. I want to control everything. But if I look back over the last 2 years, every time something has turned out really well, it's those times I've asked for help and not tried to do it myself.
Given up. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that took me a really long time to learn, like a really long time. But I know how good I feel when I help somebody else. So why wouldn't I want to let someone else have that opportunity? So that was just kind of a mindset thing I think I had to work through, but it's definitely working out, I guess, is what I'll say.
No, it's awesome to hear that, because it's just, well, I guess bringing it back to how do you keep people here? And I don't know that needs to be how do you bring them back, or how do you get them back, or how do you get them here? Because a friend of mine and I were just driving to Colorado, and we talked a lot about Dubuque, and we're both, growing families here, and we don't have intentions to leave, but we both are inspired by other communities, and we are like, oh man, if I could get into the topography of, the mountains or the coast, that would be great. But we have so much here, and we're not going to just uproot our families and leave. We're in it. We're stuck. We're doing this. So how do we help shape what's already here? And he mentioned, well, geez, the population's growing like 1% in the last 50 years or something. You know, he's like, I don't even know if that's the right metrics, but I think that if we grew our population by 20%, we would all be like, stop.
Sure.
It would be impossible to get from, the bridge to the West End.
Yeah. It already takes me a half hour.
It's not that bad. But then it becomes more bikeable.
Yeah.
But I think that like the goal is sustainable growth and growing it with the right connection. And it's no one person's job to do that. But I think that we sometimes feel disempowered as community members. And I hear people conversing about this, like, where is our power in controlling the narrative of this community and empowering other people to say, let's bring my family there. Let's go there. There's cool things happening there. And I mean, you're at the front of that. You're producing events that are attractive. So that's you are. And that's exciting because you're attracting people. You're a vibe setter. In the words of Evan Bond, he's a vibe setter. I love it. You're a vibe setter for our community, and there are a lot of people who are setting the vibe for Dubuque.
And I hope that's a vibe that everybody can feel. Do you know what I mean? Like, I want to make events that I want to attend first and foremost. Like, that's how I want to spend my time. But I don't represent everybody. So I think, again, that's one of those service things. Is if I have those skills, how can I use them for someone who maybe doesn't feel like they are part of it? I don't have the answer for that either, but I hope so. I'm open. Yeah. Well, that's very kind, I guess, is where I'll end that. Thank you.
Well, I think that's like, we want to continue to support you and what you're doing, and these ideas of, like you mentioned, like a chestnut music festival, where they have all the trappings for that. They need someone like you to say, I'll take this on and I'll partner with you as a production, manager of this. But this is, that's key. I think that's key, is like presenting those ideas and then having somebody like you who will go build a bigger team to put on a really incredible event that pours people in. And then it's opening their eyes to like, well, geez, let's go look at the real estate pages. This could be where we want to be. Like, we went to a great event. It's a great community, and it spills over. And I think, I don't know, back to that idea of, are there too many people doing the same thing? I don't think so. I think that like there's a lot of really cool opportunity to continue to grow our current community and bring new light, because there's like new people who haven't come here yet and haven't turned it on. So how do we keep them excited about where we are?
Yeah.
Another good question is like, so thinking of, and you're a perfect person for this, and don't feel the stress of this because you'll forget, you'll miss somebody.
Oh, sure.
But who are some of the people that really stand out to you in the community and that are interesting, that are doing great things, that are making a huge impact in Dubuque, that Dubuque really can't, in your eyes, do without?
Oh, you can edit out the pause while I think about it. Man.
Just start with one person. So who's somebody in Dubuque who's really inspired you?
Yeah, somebody who, and I think is doing cool things. I'm trying to pick out, it's hard to pick out just one person for the arts community because I think the arts are really robust here.
Yeah.
You also asked me about mentors last time, and I don't feel like I had a good answer for that because I don't have like a formal relationship where I've asked someone like, hey, I admire you. Will you be my mentor?
It's a weird thing to do.
It's a really weird thing to do,
but
I will say Paula Newhouse, you should totally talk to her.
I love her.
Paula's from here, but also has lived all over and has come back and chooses here.
Yep.
And I have learned so much from her, just, historical knowledge about the city and, kind of how things have worked, but also she's so visionary and big picture, where I'm really mired in detail all day long, and I spend a lot of time in the weeds, and I kind of forget to look up sometimes. So, but I think that's how her brain works naturally, and she's so looking at everything from all angles and making sure she's very inclusive in her thoughts too, and DEIA is right up in front, and I want to be more like that. So that's who I would throw out for sure.
Anybody else that's hitting the bell for you?
I should have been more prepared, but I'll leave it at that. I think.
All right, that's fine. Yeah.
I'll email you later, David, when I think of like 10 people that I'm like, talk to this person, talk to this person, talk to this person. Yes. I will say too, I guess just thinking about food, Convivium, I'm on the board there and I love that place. Leslie is someone who's another person I admire. Yeah. She's so interesting. And like, just to talk about like the huge career shift to get, you know, I'm sure most people know her story, but to make Convivium what it is after having a completely different career, I think is really cool. Cause I've kind of always been in events. I don't really know how to do anything else. So, or I guess I don't picture myself doing anything else. So she's another person that I think is just fascinating and doing really, really, really cool stuff.
That's great. She's been on our list for a while here. So
good.
It's awesome to hear.
Yeah, good.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, you've got a minute to plug off. Where do we find the events? What's the next event you're working
on? What comes up next? Well, in May, we'll start doing weddings. Actually, this will be my first time working with this company or this community organization. So ARC Corporate Games is a pretty big event that always goes down on in the port in the summer. And this is the first time they've wanted to completely outsource that. It's a huge event. It's the fundraiser for ARC, which stands for Area Residential Care. I'm still learning about what they do, but they're a really great organization. And I think it's a huge undertaking for their staff. And so they've hired me and Teresa for the first time this year.
That's awesome.
So that's this summer, June 21st, down in the port. Anybody who runs a local business in town, you get to put together a team. You get a Friday off work. There's beer. There's food. There's a ton of games. It's so for bringing out people's competitive natures in a safe and friendly way.
Yeah,
it's a fun way to do that and also build connections as your team. Get out of the office. So I'd highly recommend people look that up. We're just in the beginning stages now. So like I said, I'm still learning about them, but I'm really looking forward to that this year. I think that'll be really cool. We're about to get applications out for the night market. It's about that time. That is the second.
So you're still taking vendors for that?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So that's the second Thursday of the month, May through October. So we'll kick off in May, and that's always really exciting too, to get back outside. Let's see, I manage Winter Farmers Market. If anybody hasn't been to Kennedy Mall recently, check it out. They just were on the cover of 365 Inc. The mall. I am a downtown person. I live down here. I like to walk around downtown. I spend most of my time here, but the mall has a bunch of local small businesses in the storefronts now. I think there's this perception that, malls everywhere were on the decline, and that's definitely true. But the way they've adapted and also supported local businesses, I think is really cool. So that's where Winter Market is located. Every Saturday, 9 to noon. I'm there. Come see my smiling face.
Nice.
Buy local produce.
Yeah.
And it's surprising how much we have in February. I mean, we have vendors with greenhouses growing beautiful lettuce and celery and stuff that you think you can't get in the wintertime, you absolutely can. And that's pretty unique to here. I don't think there's many other cities that do that. So that's what I'll plug, I think. We're going through a rebrand, which is kind of exciting. So wickedriverevents.com is my website, and it will look totally different soon. So that's exciting. And quite an undertaking. But it was time. So
good for you. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming back and hitting this again with me.
Yeah, for sure.
And
I'll see you for round 3 next time in a couple of years when we have good stuff going on.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So that wraps up another episode.
Yeah.
Danielle. Of the Central Connection. Yeah.
Danielle Stowell, episode number 2. Was supposed to be episode number 1. Little goof and spoof on my end, but we got it. We got the audio this time.
The part that I love about that is, and she touched on it, and I think that's the whole purpose of this, having a podcast, and it's, for me, is connecting with people. But I think it also, like, what excited me during that conversation is hearing about her struggles of just like the most recent thing. Like, it was a pretty rough thing to bring up, because that's a big event, and she didn't control my Mother Nature. There was no backup plan of like a semi load of, snow from the north, and that hits because it was a really fun event, and it is a really fun event, and they've got some good things that came out of it. But I think it's cool to see that because we have this perception, especially online, that like the world is laid out and perfect and things are working for everyone.
Right.
You know.
That you don't post the podcast where the audio doesn't work.
Right.
You don't. So we don't see that. You
Yeah.
don't see the behind the scenes things.
And that was a fun chat. That was a fun chat. We
Yeah.
can't recreate that. We can't go back in time and grab that.
Right.
I think that's the value we bring with this. And I think that for me, what I took out of this is doing more live opportunity, as I just deleted Facebook from my phone this morning.
Nice.
Just because I got to stay more focused on what's really important in front of me. And I can find myself getting down there into the scoliosis. But I think I'll get back to where I can, pull that back in. But I think the idea here, how can we live live without any real makeup of here's what we're doing.
Yeah.
This is what's happening right now on Central, for instance, or in this neighborhood or in Dubuque, and just be okay with that.
Right.
You
Not
know?
letting like obstacles slow you down. What an obstacle of the weather. You really can't even do anything about that in
Nothing.
Danielle's case, but to see her like perseverance, just on to the next thing,
Yep.
keep moving forward. That's super admirable.
And keeping
It's-
exciting ideas alive. Like I love that she brought that up and she was willing to share that because, hey, maybe Chestnut decides to go their own route and do their thing, but she has this vision for that they'll never get.
Yeah.
No one could get that without her because she has a vision, and I think it would be really cool. I bet it would include food vendors. I bet it would include some farmers market stuff, but like a live music show on the Mississippi River. I don't even know if that's the venue. It's already set up for it, but
Yeah, it's definitely something that I think Dubuque doesn't have. Like a big festival with like some larger name.
well, there is. I
recognition.
mean, there's Schmidt Island. There's all the things
right.
happening down there,
Yeah.
but this is like a totally different vibe, if you will. It's a totally different setup, and
That's
They-
one of the most exciting things about like these past two conversations now is just finding like these visionaries, these people who, whether it's Caprice and the Fountain of Youth or Danielle with Wicked River, they have this dream, they have this vision of this thing they want to accomplish, this entrepreneurial spirit, and here they are years later and they've done it. And it's just to see that as an accessible thing, to be able, it's doable. You can implement your vision and your dream, and Dubuque is a place where it seems like that's really, really doable.
that's what excites me about next up is Mike Williams is like
Yeah.
somebody I've always found some sort of attraction to. He's like doing this really fun stuff. He's longboarding around Dubuque, Iowa. Everyone's like, if I see a guy on a longboard, it's typically going to be him.
Sure.
Ripping, downtown.
Yeah.
But he's also worldly. His eyes he grew up here, but his eyes are so big for what else is out there, and wanting to get away, but then come back and call this home.
Yeah.
And
Somebody so young to have like that level of world travels and just that experience. And now he's built this beautiful storefront on Main Street to show people his journey. It's great.
selling all kinds of stuff from wall art to, we have a pillow on our couch. It's like my favorite pillow, and it's the 4th Street elevator.
Yeah.
A big soft pillow that
Nice.
he printed. He's just providing really cool stuff.
Yeah,
So.
he had a dream and he's going for it. We had a great pre-interview, great conversation already, so I'm really excited to get him in here and to see more of what he has to say.
Cool. Well, that's the whole point of this, is just to sit down, connect with people, figure this out. A friend, Kelly Donovan, just wrote a text to me a few days ago, and she said, like, here's a name for your podcast. Like, I got a podcast, or not. I thought, like, in my mind, it was like, not another podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's like a formula, and there probably is. I'm sure we could take a course on podcasting. I even suggested that, and it's like, nah, we're just gonna wing it. I don't know that there needs to be a course or a formula. There probably is a recipe if that's your desire. I think that for my current desire is to get better at having a conversation, and then to become a better speaker, but also to highlight Dubuque. Like, these are the people. I'd love to have other guests from other places, and there's a lot of different areas that excite me. But my point is, like, how can we put a little bit of a lens on like the current folks that I know and don't know that are doing really cool things in our community?
Yeah.
And that's it.
I think this is a great format to be able to do that. We get to talk to Danielle for an hour and show everybody else who Danielle is, what she's all about, what sort of energy she's got, and they may look to her for their next event
Or get involved in some of the cool stuff that's already happening.
Yeah.
So awesome. Well, nice job.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle.
Let's cross our fingers that this is good audio.
Let's get that audio.
All right. Awesome.
All right.
That worked out perfect. Yeah, that would be cool. We can figure that